Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps, Books, Beverages, and Author Conversations. We are back for a reading recap. I'm Bree.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Emily.
The whole gang is here.
The whole gang. This is so exciting.
I feel like I need like a party kazoo.
I'll work on that in post editing or in
There you go.
post recording. See what I can add. Yeah, this is awesome. It's so fun to have everybody here. So many books to talk about. So I'm excited. We're like, I don't know about you guys, but January felt like 3 years long. So it feels like forever since I've talked to all of you, even though like I did talk to you all last month.
No, I feel that. Sometimes it felt like it went so fast. And then you just said it felt like it was 3 years. And I felt that. Yes, deep in my soul.
It's listeners because when Bree just said January felt like 3 years, what you don't see is the violent nodding and in agreement that all of us had with that. It's been a long month, but hey, it's February. We're here. We made it.
Moving on.
We did it, and we have some amazing books to talk about. Spoiler-free ep, just gonna add to your TBR, like we're adding to our own TBR shelves. So Megan is going to kick us off.
Okay, so this past month, I only got through 2 books, but that's okay because I am trying my best. So Bree and I talk about this often, but I am a pretty hardcore. I read hard copy. I don't like to audiobook it. So when I'm reading, I'm reading. So these are the 2 books I've read. The first one is
I love that, Megan. That's awesome.
yeah, I was telling Jordan, I am set in my ways. So like I'm a book reader. I only use this app kind of person. I just whatever. This is who I am.
I am a want to be audiobook listener. It doesn't always. I'm more in your camp.
Yeah.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yep, that's me. So the first one I'll read or talk about is None of This Is True. I brought my copies. Also, P.S. These are all the books that Bree bought me for Christmas. So thank you, Bree.
I also really want to read this one. So,
I should just ship them back to you so you can.
right? Yeah. So
It would work.
I have a bunch of books I have to ship you that are yours.
Oh, that's okay.
I love this.
I've had them for years at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Has it been that long?
Can we plan like a holiday podcast book exchange?
Yeah.
We could.
That would be sweet.
We've
I
got
love that.
only 11 months to plan.
I know.
Yeah, we have
Off in 11 months,
plenty
maybe.
of time.
I like it.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay, so None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. She's probably one of my favorite like psychological thriller authors. I feel like I've read a lot of her stuff, so this is yet another one to add to my what I've read list. But so the recap, Josie is celebrating her 45th birthday at this upscale restaurant and one that she normally wouldn't go to with her much older husband. He's like 20 years older. She just feels very weird and judged by this, but that just has to be known. She sees across the restaurant that another woman named Alex is also celebrating her 45th birthday with her husband, a large group of friends. Everyone's getting drunk. So, like, kind of a very different scene than what she is experiencing. After bumping into each other in the restaurant bathroom, Josie approaches Alex as her birthday twin. Like, hey, we're celebrating our birthdays together. We're birthday twins. This is not the last time that Alex sees this woman. Soon, Josie is popping up everywhere, and her sad, twisted past intrigues Alex, who is a podcast host. So she then asks Josie if she can do a podcast based on her life and all of the things that she has learned so far. But as she is immersing herself deeper into Josie's life, all of these truths start to unravel. And it's just all of these horrible things that surround her. Then suddenly, just like out of the blue, Josie disappears. Like, just, we don't know what's happened to her. She's not bumping into Alex all the time, all of a sudden. During this time of silence, as I'll call it, Alex unfolds even more about Josie through the input of others around her, like her husband, her mother, other people who know this woman. Alex is figuring out is that Josie is not at all who she thinks that she is. And she doesn't know what she's capable of or what lengths that she will go to get what she wants. She just kind of becomes this leech in her life. So it's even better than what I wrote down, which I feel like did not give anything away.
I feel
So
like
if you're
Megan
like, oh, this sounds boring, it's not.
like, dun dun dun.
Yes.
I read this one and covered it actually over on Tales Over Tales previously when I was on that podcast, and leech was a good word.
How was
Good
my
word.
synopsis then? Was
I
that
thought it was
pretty good?
fantastic.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember how I felt about the ending. It was a while back that I read it. I remember really liking it. So you said Lisa Jewell is one of your
Mhm.
favorite authors, which is great. It's the only one of hers I've read, but I really liked it
Yeah.
from what I remember. I do recall quite a few twists and turns that I did not see coming, for
Yes.
sure.
I agree. So that's why my review says, "Holy shit, this book, I did not see it coming."
I was waiting for you
Words
to.
right out of my mouth. I also like for you guys, I like to swear. That's why Brie has the explicit warning on our content. So
Swear away, my friend. Swear away.
okay. So I
I'm
also said Josie is incredibly fucked up as a person, which again, like you're kind of getting that vibe just from my brief review, but if you read this book, you will understand it even more. I had to like reread portions just so that I made sure that I was reading how fucked up she was because at first I was like, no, 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 no one really does this, right? And then you read it again, you're like, oh my God, this is happening. It is such a dark story.
Not giving anything away, I may or may not give a trigger to listeners for
Mhm.
children being involved. Sorry.
Yes, that's fair. I would say there's a lot of triggers, abuse,
Yes.
murder. I think suicidal thoughts are in there at some point. Like there's
Ideation.
just
Uh-huh.
triggers everywhere. So, but this is what I like to read, as I think people have figured out by now. So,
No, that's
I
so
did
awesome.
also say this book, like, it's a page turner. I feel like I got through it really, really quickly. It's one of the first books I finished this year. And so, if you really like dark, like psychological, I said, quote, gutter of the earth people, then this is your kind of book.
Can I
I like
ask you,
that.
Megan? Because I'm oh, can I ask you, Megan? Because I'm curious. How do you feel about the podcast element of the book?
I thought that it was necessary just because otherwise you wouldn't know this story. I feel like actually recently I've been reading a lot of mysteries or like murder-esque crime things that have also had a podcast element to them. But I almost feel like you need that because it keeps the story along. But you'll find out in this book. So she's a podcast host, but like her interviews with Josie are like a total 180 of what she had been doing before. Before, her podcast was all like woman empowerment, let's tell your story, let's like get this like positive energy out into the world. And this time it's like she sensed this darkness and was like, well, I need to explore this and unpack
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
yes, I mean I thought it was necessary for the plot. Otherwise it was just, how else are you going to find out how bad of a person this is?
No, and I was just thinking to your point, if it's not a podcast that drives the structure of it, then it's gotta be something else. So it's
Right.
like, I feel this is just my opinion that it feels like it's a little overdone,
Mm.
I
but
Like
think a
I
lot of
that
people
element to stories.
yeah.
I think a lot of people are doing it today now, like, it's just I mean, just kind of
Did
where we're
I
at, but you're right. It is like a lot of people are kind of incorporating that as a part of their story, and even in like mystery, thriller settings and
And I
genres.
think it's also like the new way to move the story through, like
Mhm.
yeah.
talking about because if you go like I love Mary Higgins Clark books, which are like you could call like old,
Yes.
right? Like dark
Yes.
mystery books, but there was no such thing as like podcasters in her story,
Right.
No.
right? So she typically has it's the lawyer, the caseworker, the judge, like somebody that's working the case. And I feel
Yes.
like podcasters are now, well, we're on a podcast ourselves,
Well,
but
it's
are
all like it's that citizen sleuth element.
yes,
Yes.
Yeah, like
Very dark.
you're the armchair detective and you're the one unraveling this.
Yes.
And I agree too, Emily. I feel like with older books it was either the people you just listed or there's like some telling letter that comes into play
Right.
or some email when email was gaining popularity or like something that had to push things along.
Did
Yeah.
you ever watch I just throw this out, so you guys watch Murder, She Wrote?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I loved the with Jessica, and I'm blanking on her last name, the actress.
Angela Lansbury or
You.
yeah.
Yeah. Fabulous. Loved it. That, like and now I transition Megan, I love Lisa Jewell books. I always see them in Target, like, on the front end caps,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Latest ones, and it's really hard to, like, not just grab it and walk out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love
Okay, are we ready for book number 2?
Yes.
let's have it.
So this totally different vibe. I will also say trigger warnings. I think I say it in my review too. So this one does it's very much suicide ideation. That's kind of the whole plot of this book, which sounds really dark and sad, but it's surprisingly upbeat. So this is The Wedding People by Allison Espach.
I like it.
Another great book here. So I start off my review saying, taking a turn from what I just told you about. Phoebe Stone ends up as an unexpected wedding guest when her reservation at a beautiful Rhode Island hotel is booked. Only her intention is not to be part of this wedding. She had no idea what was going on at the time that she booked it, but she is actually planning her suicide. She wants to be at this beautiful hotel and die in peace. She packs next to nothing. She just goes to the hotel and is prepared to die. After coming off her divorce from her husband, a career that feels like it's going nowhere, a dissertation that's not coming to fruition, unable to have children after IVS, and then the final straw is her beloved cat dying, she has no intention of being part of this world anymore. But since she knows no one at this wedding, she's kind of like, well, all bets are off. I'm just going to tell everybody like what I'm doing here. And she does that when she confronts the bride in an elevator because the bride is like, you're not part of my wedding. I know everybody here at this hotel and you're not one of those people. So what are you doing here? And she very boldly says, I am here to kill myself. And so the bride is obviously like, what the heck? And you learn all of this within like the first, I don't know, couple pages of reading. So this is not a spoiler. This is just the book.
We're just heavy right out the gate.
That just
Okay.
Right
smacked
out the
me in
gate.
the head with a frying pan. Like, "Hello."
Exactly. Essentially, the hotel is reserved only for the wedding people. But through her honesty with the bride, Phoebe ends up becoming really close with the bride. They're there together in close proximity for the whole week. The bride sees Phoebe as this really honest, bold, confidant kind of person, and that's who she really needs in her life. And so Phoebe accidentally also makes her way to becoming the maid of honor for this bride that she met just a few days ago.
Having flashbacks, do you guys remember My Best Friend's Wedding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite movies. I'm so sorry, but I'm just flashing back to that scene on the highway where she's like, my best friend broke her pelvis line dancing in Abilene over spring break. Be my maid of honor.
That's literally what happens here. She like her best friend isn't able to come and she's
Broke
like,
her
"Well,
pelvis line dance.
not her pelvis, but something else happened." And she's like, "Well, you're the next closest thing despite having other bridesmaids there. Be my maid of honor." So
Wow.
Phoebe and this bride, they're total opposites of each other, but they really fall in line together and they're for some reason just able to be really open and honest with each other about things that they feel like they have to hide from the people that they know the best. So the bride feels like she can't be herself around her groom or his family or anything. And then Phoebe obviously just feels like she's been under so much strain in her life that she's never been honest with herself in a while. But the bride is finally able to tell herself through all of this unraveling with Phoebe that the groom is not the guy for her. And Phoebe is able to ask for what she really wants in life, putting herself first for like the first time ever. So
Wow.
this whole thing, it happens. You see this build up over the couple of days that they're at the hotel, and then you come to the ending where you're like, what just happened? So another book, I wrote that it kind of reminds me a lot of The Midnight Library. I
I
don't
read that one and loved it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, same here. And I feel like just that vibe of like I don't know, you have these intentions for your life and you want things to go a certain way and then they don't, and it kind of takes that outside person to make you realize that. And I feel like that's what this book had a lot of, but between these two characters. Like the topic of death and suicide, obviously, like right out the gate is there in your face, but I feel like the book overall is really light and like comical in a way. I dare say it's a rom-com. Like it's very, I don't know, it's a very heavy topic, but it's written in such a way that you don't feel like your whole world is crashing around you. Like you want the best for these characters and you see that they have a lot of growth over the time that they're knowing each other. And it's just really humbling and kind and sincere. And so I just, despite it being so dark, it was just kind of joyful and a happy book. I don't know how else to say it.
I loved your reference to How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, although surprisingly upbeat.
Yeah. I think it's definitely worth the read. So I know you guys were saying you would like to read it. I think it's definitely worth it. I'm sure you could tie it to other books that are similar too. Like it just, I don't know, it just has a very familiar feeling when you're reading it. And also, I'm shouting out to one of my favorite podcasts, My Favorite Murder, because my girl Georgia Hardstark said that she read this book. So of course, I needed to read this book as well.
There
And
you
now,
go.
Brie, I'll pass the book. I'll mail it back to you.
There you go. Oh,
So, those are my 2 books that I read in January.
Those
love that.
And
Yeah.
honestly, before we even started recording, like my TBR list is already gonna get me through 2035, but after listening to everything that you guys are reading, I might extend to 2040.
Yeah,
These sound really good.
The podcast will continue on forever.
forever, indefinitely. We might get 4 other people to take over, I don't know.
Geez, I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, well, thank you for sharing those. Yes, that is fantastic. And I'm excited to read The Wedding People. I will be sure to report back
Yes.
once I make my way there. So many books, so little time, right?
Mhm.
It's so
So
true.
the two that I decided to bring, it was super hard for me to decide. I read quite a bit of quite a wide variety for the month, honestly. But the two that I wanted to bring, my first one is called Surprise Me by Sophie Kinsella. I'll give the setup here in a second. Does that name sound familiar? The Shopaholic series. Do you guys remember Confessions of a
Yeah.
Shopaholic?
I think
Yes.
I saw my wheels turning. I'm like, "Where Sophie Kinsella have I heard that?" Yep,
Oh, yes. Yes.
loved it.
I absolutely adore her. So, anyway, here's the setup. After 10 years together, Sylvie and Dan have a comfortable home, fulfilling jobs, and beautiful twin girls. They communicate so seamlessly, they finish each other's sentences. They have a happy marriage and believe they know everything that there is to know about each other. Until it's casually mentioned to them that they could be together for another 68 years. And panic sets in. They decide to bring surprises into their marriage to keep it fresh and fun. But in their pursuit of Project Surprise Me, from unexpected gifts to restaurant dates to sexy photo shoots, mishaps arise with disastrous and comical results. Gradually, surprises turn into shocking truths, and when a scandal from the past is uncovered, they begin to wonder if they ever really knew each other at all. So, I had a lot of fun with this read. I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars. I just always enjoy Sophie Kinsella. She's very witty, she's very charming. Her characters are often, I find, really relatable. And it was quite a season for me to read this currently. I got married in 2022, so I about 2.5 years ago now, almost. I've been with my husband a little over 4 years. And so, yeah, like a lot of just like the thoughts and the sort of feelings of, oh my God, okay, yep, one person, rest of my life. All of this is just setting right in. And it was very endearing, I found. And I will say, this isn't giving anything away, but referring even to the scandal from the past and just the different things that are uncovered, definitely not what I thought would be coming at all. There were a lot of just like pleasant twists and turns. So I love a book when I can relate to the female main character, obviously, and a lot of Sylvie's insecurities and even just her approach to conflict resolution with her husband, I found were super relatable. So I recommend this one if you're looking for something light, but like also does have a little bit of that substance to it, right? That still is like pretty thought provoking. So yeah, it was a really fun one. I
I'm
enjoyed it.
so intrigued. Jordan, I have to say, I loved Confessions of a Shopaholic. I think that's the only Sophie Kinsella like book story that I've read, and this sounds so good.
I've enjoyed everything I've read by her. I've read a couple other ones that were not shopaholic related. And she kind of has a very similar prose with all of her books, right? As most authors do, but it was a lot of fun. And with Valentine's Day only a couple weeks away now
Cute.
too,
Yes.
it's just like a really good time to like, I don't know, read something fun like that, if you will.
That's so true. Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yes.
If you're in just a lighthearted, happy couple, and if not, then go to Megan's picks.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because I
those are
like
also
depressing shit.
We have the full spectrum. Whatever
Yeah.
you're
you do.
looking for.
Whatever
You
mood
know?
you're in, like,
Right.
There you go.
there's a
I
book
love
for
it.
you.
But Jordan, I was gonna ask, are there any, not to be like raunchy, but like good ideas from this book of like ways to surprise your
That's a
husband?
really good question. Nothing that I hadn't like already
Okay.
known about or thought about, right? Okay, but the whole like I will get into this one thing cuz this is honestly not giving it away. It's in the description. So the whole like sexy photo shoot thing, right? Like the boudoir photo shoot. It's a really funny scene, honestly. It's like her so she's like good friends with her neighbor. Her neighbor is like one of her best friends and rather than like spending hundreds of dollars to go and like get photos professionally done, her girlfriend down the street's just like,
Like,
I'll do it for you.
I
And
would
like,
never.
I was gonna say that's another level of like awkward that you're throwing into a situation.
into more detail, but it is. It's like really funny.
Oh,
Anyway, speaking from my own personal experience, there are things that I would have done differently, like, but that's just me. So it was a really fun book. It was a really, really good book. Okay, my next and final reading recap, I read Sandwich by Catherine Newman. This has been a really, really popular one that's come across the Bookstagram, Book Talk, just book world. I'll give you the setup. For the past 2 decades, Rocky has looked forward to her family's yearly escape to Cape Cod. Their humble beach town rental has been the site of sweet memories, sunny days, great meals, and messes of all kind. Emotional, marital, and thanks to the cottage's ancient plumbing, septic too. This year's vacation, with Rocky sandwiched between her half grown kids and fully aging parents, promises to be just as delightful as summer's pass, except perhaps for Rocky's hormonal bouts of rage and melancholy. Hello, menopause. Her body is changing, her life is too, and then a chain of events sends Rocky into the past, reliving both the tenderness and sorrow of a handful of long ago summers. It's one precious week. Everything is in balance, everything is in flux. And when Rocky comes face to face with her family's history and future, she's forced to accept that she can no longer hide her secrets from the people she loves. So this one I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. It absolutely was just a really, really beautiful depiction of what generations are kind of going through right now. I shared with Megan before we started recording, I'm in my early mid 30s. I have a sister who's 10 years older than me in her mid to early 40s. And definitely, you know, I think that she would relate a lot more to the main character, to Rocky, than I do or than I did. But it really helped me think a lot just about society today, relationships across generations, what that all looks like, and even just kind of bridging that gap. I I want to have, right, like more compassion, more empathy for the women in my life, whether that's my mom, my sister, otherwise women in my life that I know and love and respect. And so definitely if you're a woman seeking understanding, and if you're also just looking for a really great laugh, I highly recommend it. Couple triggers in here. Miscarriage is definitely talked about quite a bit, and so is abortion. But it was lovely, and it's less than 300 pages. It was a super duper easy read. Yeah, I think it's like 270 to 180 pages or something like that. So it's a really, really good book. Highly recommend.
That sounds so it just sounds like a heartwarming book, Jordan, like you
Yeah.
were kind of describing. I haven't read it, but again, on that TBR that we've been talking about, it does kind of feel like it's giving me vibes of who is it? Lisa C. books.
Yes.
Her books
Yeah,
all
think about yeah.
multi-generational women and like the connections and they don't understand each other and then by the end of the book they maybe have more understanding of each other.
Mhm.
That's just
Mhm.
they're always really beautiful stories.
Absolutely. And there's what I think I really loved and enjoyed about it too was there wasn't anything wild or crazy that it wasn't even so much like there was a problem that needed solving, right? You talk about books that are like character driven or books that are plot driven. Yeah, this was probably a little bit more character driven. There weren't necessarily problems within the plot that the character needed to solve. The character just needed to grapple with so much that was going on from her children growing up and no longer needing her in the way that they need, in the way that we need our parents when we're young, and then her aging parents, right, who will inevitably sooner rather than later, their lives will come to an end, and that's always, kind of a hard thing. I think about it more often than I should with my dad in his mid 70s, and that's a thing that's, always at the forefront of our minds. But anyway, I digress. It was so
No,
good.
I feel like that's such a good point because I like since having kids for whatever reason, that has really, really put things into perspective for me as well. Like my parents are just now turning 60, so I feel pretty confident that I'll have a good long while with them, knock on wood. But it just, you think
Yeah.
about like now I have young ones and then seeing my parents, continue to age, it just, and even myself, like I feel like recently I've just been looking in the mirror like, oh my God, I'm so old. It's just
Feel that.
putting all of that into perspective.
Well, and just allowing it to be more common and understandable to grieve,
Mhm.
right? Grieve what was and is no longer, grieve what will come or what's inevitable. It was so well written and so beautiful. So I highly recommend.
I like it too. It sounds like it would make me cry.
I was gonna ask, is it a crying book?
I
Yeah,
didn't that's a great question I should have shared at the top. I didn't cry. I
Could
don't
you have?
I don't
right. I was gonna say, because sometimes, like, sometimes it just happens.
I think mm,
If it was a
I
certain
mean,
time of the month, maybe.
maybe maybe
Great, because, I think I've shared before, right, on the podcast, is I'm due in about 6 weeks with my second
yeah.
baby, and so I'm putting together the list of, like, okay, what books should I read, like, when I'm home from the hospital, what TV shows, what movies, but I'm being very particular about the books that go on that list. Like, I
Yes.
love the books you shared, they probably will be a little few more months after
Mhm.
baby. So, it's just funny that, yeah, there's, this one too, Jordan, maybe a few months after.
But I would go for the surprise me. I would go for the Sophie Kinsella one,
Sounds
and that one
insane.
and that one's around 350, I think, 375 pages even,
Since
you know.
most of the ones I've been reading recently are in the, like, 600 to 1,000 romantasy, I'm like, 300? Okay.
Easy.
You
It.
can do that in a night.
There you go.
Love
So,
it.
yeah, I would definitely for you. Yeah, it might have just been the state I was in emotionally. I wasn't really in a place where I felt the need. I did make note of, like, a couple of really fantastic quotes, just, again, with how well it was written and whatnot, but it yeah, no. I'm a
That's
little
good to
worried
know.
now about what that says about me as a person.
Probably
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah,
I think you're
probably
good.
nothing.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate you making me feel better about myself. Moving on.
Good. Well, I'm gonna totally change up the pattern here. I did read 2 books this month, but we will be discussing them in later episodes. So I didn't want to give away like my thoughts early on
Smart choice.
the podcast. So the 2 I did read this month are A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire and The Crown of Gilded Bones. So books 2 and 3 in From Blood and Ash. Loved them. Watch later episodes to hear my full thoughts on those. But I wanted to talk a bit about kind of books I'm looking forward to reading this month that are on kind of next on my list, and one recent did not finish book. So we'll start with ones that I'm looking forward to reading. I have to mention Onyx Storm. I
I'm
just
reading it right now.
I'm 30% through it. I already started, but I Bree, Jordan, you guys I know are reading Onyx Storm, or Jordan, you finished it.
I'm like 82% of the way through, and I'm really salty that I had to take a break and come and record this, but I did it because I love you ladies a lot.
I'm like
I'm
60% of the way through.
Oh my
You're how far?
Like 60% of the way through.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
like not just about 100 pages or
I
so
have my
in.
fourth wing sweatshirt on.
I almost wore mine too. I almost did.
My book's upstairs on my bedside table. So yeah, Onyx Storm. This is spoiler free. I'm dying, loving it, freaking out, reading every moment I possibly can. But one that I'm reading in hardcover. So Megan, right to your point, this is one that like I actually bought the hardcover to read, which makes it much more challenging to try to read while also watching a toddler. Because usually I'll have like a Kindle or an audiobook. So that's been kind of a fun reading challenge.
Yeah, that's the challenge in itself.
That I will just say that is what has converted me to an audiobook listener is because I can listen and watch the toddler, but let's see how that evolves. Um, so the other 2 that are on my list after Onyx Storm is I feel like I've done so much romantasy lately, fantasy, romantasy. Love it, like, absolutely love the genre, but I feel like I need a little bit of a break into something, like, different. So I have Horse, I just have the book here, that's next. I don't know if any of you have read this or
I've heard about it. I haven't gotten to read it yet, but
I
it looks and sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I have seen this, like, on multiple, end caps at bookstores, which usually means it's, like, super popular, but I'll just read you what this says. So, a discarded painting in a junk pile, a skeleton in an attic, and the greatest racehorse in American history. From these strands, a Pulitzer Prize winner braids a sweeping story of spirit, obsession, and injustice across American history. Horse is based on the remarkable true story of the record-breaking Civil War-era thoroughbred Lexington, the people who cared for him, the artists who painted him, and the scientists who studied his bones.
Whoa.
So it
So
like
it's a historical fiction one, which
Yep.
I love.
That's my like behind fantasy. It's like historical fiction is where I go.
Mhm.
There's very few that follow the life of a horse. So I'm really intrigued to like jump into this one next. We're gonna go from
When did that so that one just came out. Did that one just come out? Is that within the last year or 2?
perhaps I'd have to look when it was published. Perhaps.
Yeah, I feel like it was recent.
I've heard
Mhm.
wonderful things, and so I said, "You know what? Once I'm done, riding dragons through the Imperium, then I'm going to jump on a horse and start horse racing." And I'm reading these books.
Both solid options. Give me a horse or a dragon any day, honestly.
So that's on my list, and then the other one, if I'm really ambitious, if I can get to 3 in February, the shortest month of the year, but you know what? We'll go for it.
I believe in you.
I appreciate that. It's By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult. This has been
Yep, I have that one too.
since it was released last summer. I follow her on, Instagram and have loved all of her little snippets about it. So it is again historical fiction, which is I feel like I'm just going fantasy, historical fiction.
There's
Not
nothing wrong
complaining.
with
It's
that.
just the facts, but it tells the story of 2 women who are centuries apart. So it talks about Melina Green present day and then Emilia Bassano, and I apologize if I'm butchering those names, who's in the 1500s, but supposedly the true author of Shakespeare's plays. And like they're both playwrights, but like one's modern day and one is like in the 16th century, and supposedly the one who actually wrote Shakespeare's plays. And like
I
what
have always felt like Shakespeare had to have a muse. He had to have somebody even more than a muse, somebody that was,
that was right. I don't know. Those that's my next after Horse. We're gonna then jump into Shakespeare plays.
we might have to buddy read these ones together. because
That would be really fun. If anyone's up for it, let me know. But like I said, but
I'm so
3 February, we'll see how that goes.
That sounds so interesting. It also, I mean, it's so I love Judy Picoult, even though it's been a long time since I read any, and I used to like basically read everything that, and now there's just so much, and I can't get to all of it. But that almost feels like a little bit of a departure from like what she's kind of. I like that.
she's not frequently a historical fiction
No,
writer from what I know.
at least
So,
not from what I've read.
yeah, no.
It's a guaranteed cry for me almost any time I read her book. Like tears will be shed.
I'm sure this will follow in that theme in some capacity.
You you asked if I had cried, and I remember we texted in our group thread after I had finished The Nightingale.
Oh, yeah.
That was, "You
If
wanna
you
ask
don't cry
you
in that
don't."
book, there's something wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, Kristen Hanna also almost a guaranteed cry,
I was
almost.
literally about to say, you don't even need to ask me if I've cried when I read a Kristen Hanna book. That's
The
just, all you need to do is just ask, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
the
Did you make it?
Nightingale the Nightingale is like full fetal position sobbing. When Megan and I talked about it like on the podcast,
We
we
were, like,
both
crying
were
again.
crying on the pod again.
I subjected my husband to the audiobook because I was, yeah, that was how I was listening to it. I was listening to it on Audible, and we were on our way to church Sunday morning. Kid you not. And I had maybe only like 30 minutes left in the book. And so I had asked him, I was like, "Hey, we've got like a 20-minute drive. Is it okay? Like, I'm almost done." And we're like in the parking lot of church. And he's like, okay? You need a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I need a
Yes,
minute.
you do.
I need a few. I'll be okay, but I need a few." He's like, "Okay, I can't have people thinking that this was my fault. So whatever you need to do to collect yourself." Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was,
Understandable.
but
Yeah.
yes, tell us about this DNF, Emily. I'm
Yes.
super curious.
This was one it's funny, I found it through Bookstagram, through Instagram. It like popped up on my feed and it's To Be Claimed by Willow Winters. And I'll say I was intrigued. It was kind of like I said, I've done a lot of romantasy lately and fantasy kind of story vibes in the synopsis. So it's a dark paranormal romance story about two women who are there's a town that they live in and there is a like ritualistic kidnapping, that's the best I can come up with, where the townspeople of a certain age group, it's like 18 to 25, right, are paraded across stage whenever they turn 18 every year. It's called the offering. And these like unknown hooded people are there and they are supposedly they would take somebody if they want somebody, but they've never taken people in like 10 years. Right. So people kind of joke about this offering situation. But then all of a sudden this year, two best friends are like taken during the offering and nobody can do anything about it because it's part of this agreement that the town has with what we later find out is a werewolf pack that is protecting the town from others.
Okay.
Premise. What was that?
Oh, I was just thinking, this feels like The Village. Did you guys ever watch that scary
Yes.
movie? This
That
is
movie
The
is
Village, but like
kinda
sexy.
terrifying.
It's
The answer for me is always no. I'm just gonna let you know that, Megan. I'll do thrillers. I'll do suspense. I don't do the horror
But you have
stuff.
to
absolutely.
watch The Village for the twist.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Like,
I am
As
that
long as I'm able to sleep that night, am
that
I gonna be able to sleep?
yeah.
You're hesitating, and that leads me not to
Well,
trust?
so, like, I don't know, but, like, it's worth it for the twists alone in that, like, and
Okay.
I cannot tell you more because, like, it would give away everything about that, but it is and I'm not, like, always a scary movie person, and that one, I'm glad that I have seen it.
I have to say I'm not a scary movie, Jordan. I'm with you. Like I tried to watch the original Amityville Horror. I mean the
Oh.
original, thinking
That
that
was bold.
yeah, well, I thought because it was the original, the special effects would be so bad that I, like, wouldn't be as like, I could laugh about it, right? Because like, the special effects would be different. I
That
laughed
was not the case.
Not the case. That I lasted 20 minutes, turned it off, like, it was not a good vibe, so
I
I'll
mean,
do
mind you,
Do you
wasn't that
know?
around the same time as, like, The Poltergeist and, like, Exorcist or
Yeah, but have you ever listened to anything about, like, the true story behind Amityville? I was gonna say,
no,
because to me, that makes it, like, not
I
as
have.
scary. If you've listened to
no.
anything that's, like, the real story behind Amityville horror, like, to me, then you're like, "Okay."
Let me just put out say that, the movie I watch on Halloween for, like, my scary movie is Hotel Transylvania. That's
Yes,
Great movie.
it's a great movie, and
So
it's
good.
about my level of scariness.
come over and watch it with you, and they can go watch The Village.
Perfect. And I feel bad. I feel like I slightly butchered the explanation of this to be claimed, but I picked it up thinking like in this romantasy theme, that it would be kind of a different sexy take, right, Megan? Like you were, kind of saying. And I liked it at first, but what really caused me to DNF it is I didn't feel like there was enough plot to like the ratio of sexiness to plot was inverse of what I wanted, if that makes sense.
No, that happens to me sometimes too, and
Agreed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
So
don't
you were just reading porn
basically.
where it turned out, yeah.
It was like, "No, this is not what I didn't pick this up." So, I say that though because for anybody who's looking for the ratio of plot to
Yes.
sexiness in where more sexiness to plot, highly recommend. You
Yeah.
will love it. It's great. Like, go for it. If you, like me, I like more plot than sexiness, perhaps that's is not gonna be your cup of tea.
so if you're going for cute, not critical, this is the book for you.
I
if
wouldn't
you
even say
read
cute. I think I need a harder term than cute.
I know I couldn't come up with one.
It's
Yeah.
crazy though, like, it sounds like it should be so interesting. It
it
sounds
does
like it should carry you through, but
So it was kind of billed as like a sexy modern day Beauty and the Beast.
okay.
Yeah.
Was kind of the vibe that was put out there, and I was like, "Okay, okay, I could, give this a shot," and as I said, it just wasn't my cup of tea, but I like a different ratio of plot to sexiness.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't mind the sexiness. I don't mind the smut. Give me a little bit of character development. Give me some substance.
I like some story in there.
Like Emily and I buddy read the Knock 'Em Out series with Lucy Score by Lucy Score. And like that's a great example
Perfect example.
of one where you're like, okay, I can fall in love with these characters and like there's so much going on and then ooh yeah, the spice.
But
You know what I
there was a story, there was something
Yes,
that you're, like, working with, right?
totally.
So, anyway, that was my DNF.
I think it sounds like it was needed to be
Yep.
put down.
Yeah. It just we're putting that down. Moving
Yeah.
on. Moving on.
I don't think I asked real quick, and I know we need to get to Breeze, but how far in did you get when you decided?
I got about 150 pages
Okay, okay.
That's a good try.
because
Yeah,
It's a fair shot.
don't DNF book. Like if I'm going to read a book, I want to give it to the author, like to give it the chance
oh, totally.
to finish it. So it's really rare when I do. And this was one that I just kept like, okay, I'm going to keep trying to like we're going to one more chapter. And it got to a point where I was like there are no more chapters left.
Oh, yeah. No, that's see, and my thing is, if you're going to DNF, which is completely valid, it just bothers me when someone's like, "Oh, I tried a chapter
Oh no,
or 2." You know, like, you saying 150 pages, that tells me, like, you were, you know,
I
okay.
tried because I feel I mean, it takes these authors put in so
Yes.
much to their stories, and it takes sometimes years, right, of how they're gonna craft it and how they're gonna put it together and the characters and what goes into it. I know Megan and Bree, you guys, I think, get front row seats when you do your author interviews, on some of those of just how much work goes into writing a book, and what we all pick up off the shelf is version like 7,524 that they've gone through. So that's what I said. I never like to DNF a book because I feel like it's not a courtesy to the author. But sometimes for my own sake, this was one where there are certain people out there that will love it and they should read it and they should pick it up. And I am not one of them.
I was gonna say, sometimes it's just not for you, but that doesn't mean it's not for somebody else. And
Exactly.
Exactly.
like, that's totally cool. It's okay. And we got a lot of books to get to. So if you really have to DNF a book, like,
But give
it
it a
is
fair
what it
shot.
is. Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, those are
All right. So I also read, let's see, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm in the midst of the third one, but I had to take a pause for Onyx Storm. But I read two other books last month that I'll talk about. One I audiobooked, which I'm also not a big audiobooker, but I was traveling a bit. And so when I travel, sometimes, well, normally I podcast, but I was like, I was just kind of in the mood for something different. And so I read slash listened to A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, which was on my list for a very long time. And I was in the mood for something creepy and a thriller. So, Megan, I think you've read this
I was
one.
gonna say, why do I feel like I've read this?
You should
I
have.
think you might have got it for me too.
I
There's a
may
good
have.
chance.
I may have. So let me give you a little recap on it. Has anyone else read this? Because it is a popular book. When Chloe was 12 years old, her father was arrested as a serial killer, having murdered 6 teenage girls in their small town in Louisiana. Chloe, her brother, and their mom have spent the past 20 years processing and dealing with the horrific tragedy as well as the ramifications. Now, present day, Chloe is really starting to put the past behind her. She's a successful psychologist in Baton Rouge. She's engaged and preparing for her upcoming wedding until a local teenage girl goes missing and is found dead. And then another one goes missing too. And not only is the situation just like very, very similar, and they're not far from where she grew up, but it's very similar to what happened 20 years ago. And they really seem targeted to get Chloe's attention specifically. So it's very like, I mean, true like psychological thriller and mystery to a T. And I could not stop listening to it, even as I was just like, I had to know what was next. If you're a fan of true crime, which I think everybody here knows that I am, this is like the fictional take on that. It was so interesting to me to have the main character like have her dad be this infamous serial killer and like the mental impact that that had on her, and it gets into like, I mean, her mom too, and there's a lot of story in there about like what their mom is doing present day, which I don't necessarily want to give away. Certainly a lot of trigger warnings for this, being that they're murdered of teenage girls, suicidal thoughts and ideation, um, a, a drug abuse, like so it goes down the line, but it could not. I just couldn't stop. Like I wanted to find out everything. Definitely not a lighthearted read if you can't tell. Like if you're looking for happiness and happy endings, this definitely isn't it. But
This was not surprisingly upbeat.
it was
Yeah.
not. There's really not a lot of levity like anywhere.
Yeah.
But I was constantly trying to solve the puzzle, which to me is like I know that it's really good, especially when, like, Jared comes home and I'm like, "I have to tell you about this mystery that I'm reading and, like, what my thoughts are on it. I want you to know who I think the killer is." Like, that's those sort of vibes. And I would say, like, there were elements and that I thought I figured out early on, and I don't know if that's just because I listened to a lot of stuff that, like, has me thinking that way, or if so, but either way, like, I was still left with some surprises. I didn't care about any of the clues that I picked up on earlier. I was actually really proud of myself. So,
So you were pretty surprised by the ending then is what you're saying?
I was surprised by pieces of it,
Okay.
certain
Okay.
elements. But either way, like, I was captivated the entire time and just couldn't wait to see it through.
That is definitely the mark of a great thriller.
Megan, do
For
you remember your thoughts on this when you read
I'm
it?
trying to think because I feel like I finished this either right before I had May or like right after, and it's feeling a little bit like a blur. And so I'm wondering if maybe I just need to reread it.
Yeah.
Because there's another one that I also read that I feel like feels similar to this story that I think I'm mixing the two together, and I don't want to be incorrect on what thoughts I give. So I will share them at
Well,
a later time.
I have very little information, but I did briefly read that this is up to potentially be adapted into a limited series.
On what platform, do we know?
I do not know.
Well, let me ask, because this has vibes too, a little bit of, have you guys read The Silent Patient?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Sorry,
Sorry.
question in this crowd. My
That's like one of my favorite books.
It's like I feel like it's your most recommended book, Brie.
I mean, just about. And if anyone hints that they like psychological thriller, I'm like, have you read The Silent Patient?
patient. Yes, okay. I figured after all the books we reviewed today that I'm like, this group has to have read The Silent Patient. And you've read The Maidens?
Yes.
Yes.
We
Yes.
covered that.
We covered The Maidens.
Yep. Yep. No, those both like that kind there's vibes of Megan, some of the ones that you've read, Bree, this A Flicker in the Dark, just kind of in that same vein of Silent Patient-esque
I
kind
would
of.
say, like, if you like Lucy Foley, who does like The Guest List, The Paris Apartment as well, but speaking of The Silent Patient and The Maidens, has anyone read The Fury? Because I
No.
haven't.
God, I
It's
haven't.
on my
I
TV.
have that one.
Same.
I haven't read it.
I'm very curious. I guess I haven't like looked a whole lot to see. The Maidens was an interesting one. I didn't quite have the same feelings as I did with The Silent Patient.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say the same thing. It fell
So,
off a little bit for me.
yeah. Which, to be fair, The Silent Patient is very hard to follow.
Silent Patient blew my mind. Like, I think I sat on the couch in shock when I
I
finished that book.
I like screamed out loud while reading it.
Oh, goodness.
So, yeah.
Have
Either
you read
Flicker
it?
in the what's that?
Jordan, you
I
read
haven't
it?
read it.
Okay. I'm saying Silent Patient. It
It's a
must.
must.
It's a must read.
Yeah, it's a must. Like you have to.
Am I going to be anxious and stressed out by the end of
No, but I was in like catatonic shock.
Yeah.
End of the book. I don't know
Okay.
how else to put it. There's plot twists that I think we've all talked about with various books and experienced like plot twists. And then there is what I call the plot twist, capital like the plot twist. And Silent Patient is a the plot twist.
What I did appreciate about The Maidens is that it did do like a really quick like, hey, we're related
I
to
know,
the
I
Silent
love
Patient.
that.
Oh, there was like a little Easter egg kind of
Yes.
thing. Okay.
Yes.
I did
Okay.
really like that. Yeah, that was
I
awesome.
do love and enjoy when authors do that
Mhm.
personally. That's always fun, especially if you like religiously follow an author or like you've read so much of their work and then you pick up on it and it's just like, oh, that's
Anthony
from one of
Horowitz, if you've read like The Word is Murder or any of his books,
Okay.
a few of them, and he does, I think, like little Easter eggs like throughout. They're kind of fun.
I do like it when they do that. Okay, my next one, so I read it because we're talking to this author on the podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and recap it here too, because I think the conversation is going to be totally different with the author. So she was actually supposed to be our author interview in January, and we kind of had to switch some schedule things around. So we're still going to have her, but I want to talk about Darkly by Marisha Pessel. Part of the reason, well, not only did I read it, but like I want to talk about it because it's not at all what I expected in a really good way. So here's my recap. Louisiana Veda was a legend and an icon. In the late 70s and early 80s, she rose to fame having produced board games known as the Darkly series, some of which, and one in particular, were quite controversial and even banned because it was so dangerous. So these would often bring in like real world tasks that these people would have to do. But the details around Veda's personal life have always been really vague, and then she mysteriously died under suspicious circumstances. Present day, 17-year-old Dia is a huge fan of Louisiana and the Darkly Games. So when the Louisiana Veda Foundation announces a summer internship program, Dia can't help but apply, despite that thousands and thousands of other applicants are also looking to do this. The one question on the application that she has to answer and that everyone else has to answer as well is, what would you kill for? When she's accepted, surprisingly, along with 6 others from around the world, they make their way to London and then an isolated island, only to find out that this quote, internship is actually going to take them into a Darkly game that has caused one local teen to go missing. You guys, I did not know what to expect at all with this. Hold on, I also want to show you it to you because it's
Yeah,
like,
show it to us.
Ooh,
It's pretty.
that's pretty.
Yeah.
It's
so
giving.
pretty.
I know you're going to give your review and you're going to share your thoughts. It's giving Jumanji,
Mm.
I was like,
like
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games vibes. I was feeling like a cross
So
between the 2.
Jumanji, interesting. I mean, I get where you're going with the game thing there. I wouldn't say it was so much like that. Actually, to me, it was more like Agatha Christie a little bit. Like
Okay.
there were
Mm.
like notes of like Agatha Christie in there, but it's honestly just like very gothic and
Okay.
mysterious. It is extremely complex and intricate, which but not in a way that you ever feel like you don't know what's going on. It's just a really complex story. There's a lot of different layers. You're pulling in like Louisiana Veda's history and why her personal life was so private and what did that really mean. On top of the fact that these teenagers are like trying to solve this mystery in the midst of these darkly games where you when they're playing it like you kind of have to figure it out as you're in it. There's not like a set of rules for the
Right.
board game per se. And it's creepy in some instances. Not ever
Mm.
scary, but it's definitely creepy. But overall, like really I was really surprised with how much like I enjoyed reading it. I liked it. I would definitely recommend it. I think high school me and like early college me would not have shut up about it. I would have been like,
Interesting.
this is it.
Okay.
Like, this is the book.
Okay. Now remind me, did you mention is this a series? Does it end
No.
on a cliffhanger or it's just okay. Okay,
It's a
okay.
it's a stand well, right now it's a standalone. I mean, I guess you could say like but I don't know that there's any intention to like expand on it. Although there's certainly room for that. But I felt like Pestle like really brings this story to life so well. She takes readers on a journey that is eerie, but also, like, so enjoyable, and again, if you like mystery, like, that's certainly an element to it in multiple ways, not just with the missing teen, but also, like, what happened with Louisiana Beta's life and, like, how did she die? Why did she die? All of that, and so Marisha Pessl is gonna be on the podcast this month as well to talk about it, and I'm super excited just because it's unique to me. I guess I'd never read like anything quite like it, and it'll be really interesting to see just how you bring a story like that together that is so complex is like amazing to me.
I
But
am so looking forward to hearing the interview with her.
Same.
Agatha Christie is like Mary Higgins Clark, Agatha Christie, all the OGs, right, in this genre. And you do feel like I would be curious, does she have a wall with red string where she like mapped out like right before she wrote the book, like
mm, I think
about
she
how
has
it's gonna come together? You'd
You're
have
just so curious about like how their brains work
right.
yes.
Yeah.
that they come up with these things. Yeah.
Well, because as I'm reading it, I was like, what? Like how did you do this? How even the Darkly games themselves, I was like, because initially I was like, game, I don't know, like I don't know, I don't consider myself much of like a game person. So I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. This is like, I'm fascinated by even these games that she's created. So it's kind of like a macabre feel to it the whole time too. So I would definitely recommend that. Sounds interesting at
No,
all.
that's so cool. I love that.
Awesome. This is such a good array of possible books. Maybe one not to read unless you really like that, but that's
I know I hope there's a listener out there that picks it up and loves it.
yep.
You're gonna get a DM.
And if that's you, then DM me because I would love that. Just I think they're out there.
Oh, they are. They are. They're definitely out there. So, no, that's okay. So, I already mentioned it, but Marisha Pessl is coming up on the podcast to talk about Darkly. We'll also be diving into A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer Armentrout, book 2 of the From Blood and Ash series. And where can everybody find everybody else?
You can find me on Instagram at Cozy Reads and Sips.
You can find me, Emily, at Books and
And of course, Narratives and Nightcaps is on Instagram as well.
Like, I don't know. We're together, but I
I
don't
know. I
stand
was gonna
alone.
say, and then there's the two of us. So, you know, for rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We really appreciate it. Let us know if you end up picking up any of these books. We'd love to know your thoughts as well, or if you've read them and you have either a same opinion or something totally different. That's all good. But we'll be back again next month with more books in a reading recap. Cheers.
Cheers, my
Cheers.
friends.